All right, guys, I just want to welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be breaking down a big game in the Big 12, the final Bedlam contest for the foreseeable future. Oklahoma State hosting Oklahoma, 6-point line in favor of the Sooners. Totals at 62. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS from Stillwater. Looking at this Oklahoma offense, Dalen Gabriel has been the heart and soul of this football team. 42 points per contest for the Sooners. Gabriel, 71% comp rate. 2,300 yards, 19 touchdowns, 4 picks. Has also added 8 touchdowns and another 294 on the ground. He's been absolutely splendid for this Oklahoma offense. Has really taken that next step in his 5th year of college football. Has certainly cleaned up some of his mishaps from last year when it comes to mechanics and, a little bit of accuracy at times. Upping his completion rate significantly from 63 last year. This past game against Kansas, though, Nick, 14 of 19 passing, had an interception, only had 171 passing, and obviously they really stuck to the ground game in that one against Kansas where they had much success. But when it came time to deliver in crunch time, this passing attack had no confidence. Nick Anderson only had 1 grab the entire game, and they had 55 attempts rushing for 269 and 5 touchdowns. Those are great numbers, right? But when they wanted to throw the ball, it didn't seem like they had much confidence, and that ended up biting them in that game against Kansas late in that fourth quarter. Ended up as a 5-point loss. What do you make of this Oklahoma passing attack in this moment in time where before traveling to Lawrence, they've been very good, progressing at a very steady rate?
They are a very solid passing unit. Dalen Gabriel has been a fantastic quarterback for this team. He was having a great season. The result at Kansas obviously is a bit disappointing if you're an Oklahoma fan. It certainly puts them in some trouble for the playoff race. They're certainly not out of it, but it does put them in a tricky situation. They're averaging 489 total yards of offense per game, 308 yards passing per game. It's a pretty impressive number, Gabriel. He really has jump-started his career again, 2,300 passing yards, 19 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. The numbers are good, right? He has numerous targets to spread it out to. It's a very balanced attack. There's no one that's really jumping off the page as the number one guy. It's a very balanced wide receiving room that has a bunch of different guys in the 300 to 400 receiving yards range. I really like what Oklahoma has done on offense so far this season. They're a very efficient offense that's scoring a lot of points, similar to what they did during the Lincoln Riley era, but I think this offense is getting better as time goes on. I like this matchup against a Pokes defense that struggles in certain situations. They've given up 409 total yards of defense allowed per game so far this season. This passing attack is very high flying, and it's a very balanced spread out attack. There's so many different weapons they can hit you with.
Yeah, Oklahoma, it looked like a, typical Jeff Lebby offense on Saturday when it comes to running the ball. They still have no explosiveness, though, outside the top 120 and 20, 30, 40-plus yard rushing attempts, and that's certainly been a big problem for them is the lack of explosiveness. And obviously, they are able to really abuse Kansas on the ground, which is not hard to do. It was their first game of such this season. Highest total before that was 220 against Arkansas State, 189 and 201 respectively in the games against UCF and Texas. So that's certainly very encouraging what they were able to do. But still, the lack of explosiveness is going to be notable the rest of the year. Tyree Walker has been a major factor in this running game, 385 and 5 touchdowns. Marcus Major hasn't been utilized as much over the last couple weeks. Didn't even play against Kansas. He was their leading rusher against UCF, though. He had 82 yards. Javante Barnes, I don't even know if he's healthy or not. So, they really have not. This is what we talked about before the year, though, was the lack of talent in this running back room. 180 a game, though, rushing, certainly nice and complimentary. Gabriel's really helped out himself. But again, just the lack of explosiveness is certainly a concern for me, and we'll focus on some of those weapons. Andre Anthony out for the season, second leading pass catcher there. Nick Anderson, he's really stepped up. He has 8 touchdowns of his own, 17 grabs for 405 yards. He's been terrific. He had that game-winning touchdown against Texas, 105 and 2 scores against UCF. Again, only 1 reception and 18 yards against Kansas. So they want to get him more involved, especially since he's been a great downfield threat. Joey Farouk, 449, 2 touchdowns. He's also a guy that's got plenty of speed who can win downfield. Slot warrior Drake Stoops, 40 receptions for less than 400 yards. He has 5 touchdowns as well. Less than 10 yards per catch, but that's exactly what you anticipate from him. And Jaden Gibson from time to time has been an explosive player. So, the supporting cast, Nick, like we said, it's not all that talented, and it still seems to be a bit of a problem here, but they're still producing. I kind of want to get your thoughts on the lack of an explosive running game and how that might affect them here on the road.
It certainly is an issue having that lack of explosive running game, like you said. Marcus Major has not quite had the season we hoped. Tway Walker has been having a good season, but the two of them, they still only combined for under 700 yards rushing. So certainly is a low number if you're an Oklahoma fan. I think it is a problem for this team. The 180 is not a terrible number, but they really do lack those explosive downfield plays. And it certainly can be a problem if you're relying on your quarterback too much to make plays happen. That's the end up making mistakes and having turnovers that Gabriel can produce. They really seem to lack that punch in the running back room, and it's a problem for this team. They really do have an issue with that. It's certainly something to be a concern. I think it can be an issue this week against Oklahoma State, who can beat you and make you run the ball and make you a little uncomfortable with that. If they do find a way to stuff the run and force Gabriel to throw the ball and put him in tough situations, the secondary of Oklahoma State's a pretty good unit that can definitely make plays and get interceptions off Gabriel and make the Sooners in tough position.
Now you look at the offensive line; it's been a pretty steady unit for them at left tackle. Walter Roos has been very good for them. Troy Everett hasn't played the last couple games. Not sure what the status is for him, but he's been a real standout there at left guard. Andrew Brown, of course, at center. He's been a longtime veteran for this unit here. McCade Moretta earlier this year, he was knocked out in the Texas game. I'm pretty sure he's out for an extended period of time. Could be wrong, but these guys have been solid overall. Certainly not the most talented, but they still have some nice size, and some of the experience is a lot better than it was a season ago. I think they've been pretty sound in pass protection. Again, the lack of lanes for the passing or the rushing attack has been evident, but they've been able to turn out nice yards regardless. Tyler Guyton's also been a big part of this offensive line. And McCade, he actually did play against Kansas, so I was a little off on that one. After it seemed like against Texas, he was in about for a while, did end up missing a game there. But right now this seems to be a fully healthy offensive line, Nick, and I think it's a very sound one, especially in pass protection. They do enough to get the job done. They're not going to be facing a really fierce pass rush like they were a couple seasons ago here. How do you think they'll fare here? Well, they got to be sturdy in protection, and of course you don't want to spark up too many penalties, and it's going to be a loud stadium.
This is certainly a good offensive line that is fully healthy. They're in a solid unit here. This Oklahoma State pass rush is not fantastic, so that certainly is a matchup that I think benefits the Sooners here. Like you said, that is important. They'll cut down on penalties, obviously, playing in at Boone Pickens Stadium. It's going to be very loud, the last Bedlam game. Those fans are going to be fired up. Mike Gundy is certainly going to get that crowd fired up. It's going to be tough. Pre-snap penalties could certainly be a problem here for this team. They got to be able to cut down on those, make sure the pass protection is fully positive, and also make sure the run protection is good. They can get some running lanes, maybe they'll be able to produce a little bit on the ground and get some nice chunk yardage plays to help kill clock and help this offense out.
Looking at the Oklahoma State offense, early on in the season, first 4 games, they struggled significantly. They scored 27 or less in the month of September. A lot of issues at the quarterback position. I mean, not many yardage totals to speak of. Completion percentage was in the can. And, they went into that Kansas State game at home. And I was one of the only people that picked them to cover. I think it was like an 11 or 12-point spread. And I was like, this seems like an opportunity for Gundy and his bunch to bounce back. They ended up winning that game, and that has led to a 4-game winning streak. Lots of reasons why. The first one will start with Alan Bowman finally settling that, somewhat quarterback controversy. Only completing 57% this year, 1,580 yards. That's about around 200 yards per contest, 5 interceptions, 8 touchdowns, but he was great against Kansas, beat them 39-32. He had 336, and he's had 2 touchdowns each in the last 3 games. Against Cincinnati, he almost had 300 in that one as well. This is a veteran quarterback. He was at Texas Tech as a starter. He was on the Michigan roster for a little bit. He's got some veteran weapons in Jaden Bray, who's posted 349 through the air. Brennan Presley, 39 receptions, 318, 5 touchdowns. He can also make waves in the special teams game. And Rashad Owens. And, these 3 guys have really been the mainstays here for this receiving core. What do you make of this passing attack, Nick? It's all of a sudden finding its stride here in the middle of the season.
This is certainly a unit that's getting better. This passing attack is improving over time. This Oklahoma State team looked dead and buried after a poor start to the season. They started off 2-2 with a bad loss at home to South Alabama, and they lost on the road to Iowa State. They've rattled off 4 in a row. They found themselves in a good spot. They beat Kansas. They beat a very good West Virginia team that's improving on the road. This Oklahoma State team is rounding into form. This passing attack is getting better, 244 per game through the air. This offense in general, 429 total yards of offense is not bad for a Mike Gundy setup. I like that a lot from them. Bowman's getting better. The 53% completion or 57% completion percentage is definitely bad, and the 5 interceptions to 8 touchdowns is a very poor ratio. They also have a balanced passing attack. They spread the ball out. Jaden Bray has 349 yards and 1 score. Brennan Presley has 318 and 5 touchdowns. Rashad Owens 309 and a touchdown. Ollie Gordon 201 and a touchdown. Dejon Stribling has 200 yards and 1 score for him as well. So it's a very balanced passing attack where they seem to spread the ball out a whole lot. Ollie Gordon, of course, is really that big man for them on the ground who's really breaking out and having an incredible second half of the season so far. We'll get to him in a second, but he's also a weapon in the passing attack, which I think is important for this offense. They're very balanced, which is really good. They have a good way to kind of balance the ball out and spread the ball out when they have to. I think Bowman is a serviceable quarterback in the Big 12, and playing against an Oklahoma defense that isn't fantastic, this could be a good matchup for him.
Yeah, Mike Gundy, he's just been so good at adapting. Spencer Sanders had him for 4 years as a completely different offense than what they had under Mason Rudolph in years prior. I mean, he's just been so good at being able to do that, and he's really had to adapt here as well. So it's not the same old school offense where they really just air it out. But again, Gundy just continues to work magic here. And of course, that's going to lead us to Ollie Gordon, who's just been magnificent in this 4-game winning streak, 1,087 rushing, 10 touchdowns as the leading rusher in college football, 201 and a receiving touchdown through the air. Back-to-back games of 270-plus yards, 6 rushing touchdowns in those 2 contests. He's been absolutely magnificent for this running game, Nick. What do you make of Ollie Gordon? And, of course, his counterpart isn't all that bad in Jaden Nixon himself.
Certainly a player that is absolutely breaking out. Like I said, in the second half of the season, he has really turned it on. 1,000 yards rushing already this season, 7.7 yards per carry, and 10 scores. Just a gaudy number. 7.7 is impressive. Nixon is a great 3-down back. He's got 156 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, and 1 score. Elijah Collins has 142 and 2 scores as well, 4.7 for Collins. So these 3 backs here are very good. Collins, doesn't get a whole lot of touches. Nixon's also a solid back. Ollie Gordon, we were waiting for him to break out. He is hitting his stride here and is in a great spot. This offense is producing on the ground. 184 per game on the ground is a solid number, very similar to Oklahoma's number. I like what I've seen out of Ollie Gordon. I think he's a really good back, good speed, nice cuts with him, and he's really hitting his stride here, and it's helping that the offensive line is getting some nice blocks for him as well.
Yeah, the offensive line, they've been a pretty good unit this season. Haven't really folded that much in pass protection outside of Dalton Cooper, left tackle, who's really been getting beat up a good bit. Jason Brooks at left guard certainly has been a bigger liability. I think the left side is going to be an issue for him. Maybe not in this game as much, but these guys have been pretty sound in the run blocking game. Preston Wilson at right guard, he's been phenomenal as a pass blocker this year. Cole Birmingham at right tackle, he's kind of struggled as well. He's, played a good bit at right tackle, as has Cooper. They've kind of been mixing and matching this offensive line, but this is a guy, they got guys who are 6'4", 6'5", in that 300-pound range. Not the biggest of units, but they've been carving out some nice lanes for this rushing attack. It certainly has not been Ollie Gordon, who's been terrific. Overall, though, this Oklahoma State offense, Nick, much better than we thought it would be after putting up only 7 points against South Alabama in Week 3 compared to where they are now. 3 straight games of 39-plus points.
This is certainly an offense that is improving. We did not expect this offense to turn around quite like they did. I really thought this offense was dead and buried, but they have found themselves in a great spot. Now they're producing. They're putting up a lot of points. You look at their last couple games, 45 against Cincinnati, 48 against West Virginia, 39 against Kansas, 29 against Kansas State. They've been putting up points as a very efficient offense with great balance.
Now looking at the Oklahoma defense, Brent Venables obviously putting some fine touches on this side of the ball, but it started to fade a little bit. You've seen the game against Texas where they did allow 527 yards, but they forced a lot of fumbles, made some crucial stops. And this is college football. You're going to give up yardage totals to that team in Texas, especially in a rivalry game in Dallas and whatnot. Wasn't all that concerned, but it followed them into UCF where they gave up, only 397 yards, but they gave up plenty of big plays in that one. Only ended up winning by 2, and the reason it probably didn't go to overtime is because of a horrendous play call by the Knights. They go to this Kansas game here. They got absolutely abused on the ground, through the air as well. At the end of the day, it was only 443 total yards. They gave a big completion on 4th down late in that game. Jason Bean was really just able to take advantage of poor defense in this contest. And, against the run, 41 carries for 225, 5.5 yards per carry, and those 4 touchdowns. This was abysmal from them on the ground. It seemed like Kansas had a lot more yards than that, Nick. So they just could not stop them one bit. Oklahoma, they scratched and clawed their way back into this one. And the defense ended up settling down, allowing them to take the lead. But, I'm kind of shocked with what I saw against the Jayhawks. Danny Stutzman is an elite linebacker for them. 73 tackles, 11.5 tackles for a loss. The defensive line's got plenty of options as well. Ethan Downs, he's been good for them. And, you look at guys like Isaiah Coe, Trace Ford as well, the former Oklahoma State player. They got good players on this side of the ball. Jarrett Canick's been stepping up for them at linebacker. Deshaun McCullough and his versatility has been welcomed. We'll talk about the secondary in a second. But what do you make of this front seven, Nick, that's much improved, as is the entire defense, but we're starting to see some mishaps last couple of weeks, and my confidence has just dwindled in this side of the ball.
I certainly am worrying about this defense. They've gotten a bit weaker as the week's gone on. They've given up 370 yards total offense so far. 237 through the air, 132 on the ground. That 132 on the ground is certainly a number that's worrying me. Danny Stutzman obviously leading the way, 73 total tackles for him, 11.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a pick, 2 pass breakups. I love what I've seen out of him, Jaron. Kanek is playing well as well. 46 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Kip Lewis has 30 total tackles. Deshaun McCullough, 26, 3.5. Ethan Downs coming off the edge, 23, 6 and 4.5 sacks for him. Isaiah Cole, he's getting better, 18 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss for him. Rondell Bothroyd has 13 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss. Want to see more production of him. Trace Ford, need to see more out of him as well. He's got 8. He has 10 total tackles, 3 pass breakups plus a pick, 2 tackles for loss. This is a front seven that's pretty solid. I mean, they got a great leader in Stutzman. They've gotten dashed on the run as of late. It's been a bit of an issue for this team. They're getting beat on the ground. And when you're going against a guy like Ollie Gordon, who's just a dynamic, incredible back, that certainly is a benefit and a nice matchup for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, guys like Coe, Jacob Lacey, DeJoun Terry, you guys have been really good on the interior. I think Oklahoma certainly for years has had a great part of this defense, but they've not really shown it as of late. But like you said, guys like Rondell Bothroyd certainly should have had more production by this point in the season. Looking at the secondary, this is also a part, for the most, this defense has replaced or returned rather a lot of starters, a lot of, experience on this side of the ball. McCullough, his abilities to play in coverage have been noticed. He's been great on that side for them. Gentry Williams has really been a key factor for them in the secondary. 3 interceptions. Billy Bowman, 3 as well. As a team, they have 14. Key Lawrence has really, made some big-time adjustments at his safety spot. This is Oklahoma secondary that's always kind of had some talent, and they're starting to finally showcase it. And I think Venables, if they can have these guys for one more year, really be playing at a high level. True freshman Peyton Bowen, he's just been flat out phenomenal. He forced a fumble against Texas, just came out downhill and crashed right in there. Been good in tackling, coverage, and against the runs. This is a player you're certainly going to want to see try to get into the box against Ollie Gordon and slow them down. Overall, this is secondary. Again, it's been really good. Some of the big plays they gave up, though, was a little bit concerning, mainly against UCF. Against Texas, again, you kind of expected them to have some success there, and they even did make some good plays in that contest. They ended up snagging 2 interceptions, but they did allow, 84% comp rate in that game. That's the only second time this year they've allowed over 60%. So they're limiting opponent completions. Kansas even was held to under 50%, snagged 2 interceptions there, but at the end of the game, they did not step up, Nick, and I think maybe the confidence there going on the road once again could be a bit of an issue. A lot of size, not a lot of size from Oklahoma State. They do have some nice speed. They can really take advantage of you. So I just want to see them be sound with fundamentals really in this one.
This is a secondary that's a good unit, but they've lacked a little bit of punch this season. K. Lawrence, for his part, 36 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups, 2 picks. Billy Bowman, 3 picks for him. Tied for the lead in the team with Gentry Williams, 3 pass breakups, 31 total tackles. Woody Washington, 29 total tackles, 2 pass breakups. Peyton Bowen, 4 pass breakups, the forced fumble, 25 total tackles, plus a sack for him. Gentry Williams, 3 interceptions, 18 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss. I like those numbers. Reggie Pearson looks pretty good as well. Kendall Doolby, 16 total tackles, 2 picks, and a pass breakup for him. So this is a unit that has some depth. They have some nice rotational pieces. They get beat on occasion, which is certainly not helpful. We saw them get beat. They gave up 237 yards per game through the air, which is about identical to what Oklahoma State's giving up through the air as well. And that's a pretty good secondary unit. This is a decent unit for Oklahoma. I do like this unit, but they have potential to get beat on big plays, and Oklahoma State could certainly, absolutely exploit that and really get the explosive plays downfield.
Now looking at the Pokes defense, they're playing much better this year than I thought they would be. I really thought they'd take another step back. But again, Gundy's really got these guys going in the right direction. Look at what they do against the run. Inconsistent unit. They were elite against Iowa State and against Kansas, held them to 90 rushing yards, and they've allowed 200 plus 4 times this year. All 4 games included over 5 yards per carry. 3-1 in those contests, including, 2 of them by double figures. So the run defense really hasn't been the biggest downfall for them. But it could certainly be an issue here against the Jeff Lebby offense. They'll certainly be glad to take advantage of you on the ground. Anthony Goodlow, he's been phenomenal for them on the stat sheet. Not as great, only 4 TFL and a sack, but he's been phenomenal against the run. Nicholas Martin leads a strong linebacking core, 83 tackles, 11.5 TFL. He's found his way in there for 5 sacks as well. This is really, kind of an average Joe defense, though, up front with Justin Kirkland. He's been a solid rotational piece for them. Nathan Latu, Xavier Ross, some of these guys getting on the field. None of these guys really stand out for you outside of Goodlow, Nick. And, the inconsistency has certainly been a problem. I think we'll see a little bit of both here in this game. If I had to guess, though, it'll probably be more bad than not. But is this run defense deficiency going to be enough to cost him this game?
There are some good pieces, but this is just, like you said, an average defense that isn't jumping off the stat sheet. 400 yards of total offense given up per game, 238. Pass yards allowed, 170 allowed on the ground. That's a tough number, 170, although the matchup does benefit considering Oklahoma's not fantastic on the ground. So there are some solid pieces here. I like Nicholas Martin a lot. 83 total tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, plus a pick for him. Good numbers. Colin Oliver, 52 total tackles, 9.5 TFLs, and 4 sacks. Xavier Benson, 35 total tackles, 3.5. Anthony Goodlow, 26 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1 sack. You want to see more out of him, but he has been, if you watch the film, he is there as a disruptor, just not quite on the stat sheet. Justin Kirkland, a good rotational piece with 13 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss for him. Colin Clay, 9 total tackles, good numbers. Cody Watershed, 8 total tackles, solid numbers for him. Xavier Ross, 6 tackles, want to see more out of him. So there are some solid pieces here. I do like what they have. I think you want to see more out of some of your bigger names. You need to see more out of Goodlow. You need to see more out of Kirkland and Oliver this weekend. But outside of that, this is a solid unit. There's some hard-hitting guys who just work hard and they get the job done.
You got Colin Oliver, a guy I said all the way back in 2021, his freshman year. I was like, this is a guy that you're going to want to look out for. He ended up putting up 10-plus sacks. He's up to 235 pounds now, more of a traditional linebacking role for him. His pass rushing skills are still on display. He's, been a little bit more inconsistent against the run. He's been big for them, though, and this, role has certainly been beneficial. 5 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles, 9.5 TFL. This is a player that certainly want to show out in this game, but I definitely want to see him step up against the run if Oklahoma's going to be, going with that first as their option. In the secondary for Oklahoma State, I kind of figured they would struggle back here tremendously, and it certainly hasn't been, the best season for the Pokes. They've been giving up a number of big plays. They've obviously had a lot of turnover on this side of the ball. 92nd in pass defense. They've allowed 17 touchdowns to only 8 picks. They have a 4-10 against Kansas. Last 2 weeks, they've really tightened up against, middle of the pack passing attacks, I'd say, in WVU and Cincinnati. Iowa State absolutely torched them. And Iowa State coming into that game, they were not much of anything. They gave up about 350 yards and 3 touchdowns in that one. So the inconsistency just really seems to be all over this defense. I think the secondary, though, they're starting to play with some confidence for the most part. Some of the big names here for them. Corey Black, one of the veterans at cornerback. Cameron Epps, freshman safety, has been just terrific. He had just 3 picks and 4 pass breakups on the year. And just kind of a bunch of plug-and-play guys. Certainly not as much experience as they would have hoped for. Kendall Daniels, he's been a very solid performer in coverage. Trey Rucker, he's not been very great for them really in any facet. This is an interesting secondary. DJ McKinney as well. Some of these guys have been stepping up. I really like Cameron Epps, though, and, Corey Black also. What are your thoughts on the secondary going into this game? Because Oklahoma, they're obviously going to be probably a run-first attack, but they have some of that speed. They can burn you downfield. The Pokes might be susceptible to that in this 3-3-5.
There are some solid pieces in this 3-3-5 that I like, but this team is not incredible in the secondary. I do need to see some better production. Kendall Daniels, 64 total tackles, 3.5 tackles lost, 1 sack, plus a pick for him. Trey Rucker, 54 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss for him. Cameron Epps looking good in coverage of the 4 pass breakups, 3 picks and 29 total tackles. I like the numbers I've seen out of him so far this season. I think he's a good player that you see there in the back end. Cam Smith as well, another guy who really needs to improve his game. Good in coverage, but really I need to see more out of him. 9 total tackles. It's interesting that Oklahoma, they need to be able to run the ball against a pretty weak run defense here for Oklahoma State. If they can find that way to balance and get them on the ground with Walker involved early on, they'll have a lot of success against this Oklahoma State team. Oklahoma State is pretty decent against the pass in some situations. They're about similar with Oklahoma, so I think it's really going to come down to which team is better against the run, and whatever team has more success running the ball is going to win this game.
Yeah, no doubt. Xavier Benson, a player I forgot to mention now, linebacker. There's some nice talent at certain areas. I think linebacking core, they're going to have to be strong in this one and slowing down that run. They've certainly been the probably brightest spot for this football team, but they've been really bad at giving up big plays in the secondary, so that'll be something to watch. Looking at the tail of the tape, these team comparisons, quarterback is going to go to the Sooners. Cowboys, I'll give them the edge at running back and wide receiver. Even though it's kind of even there, I'd say it maybe wide receiver. Offensive line, I'll go ahead and give it to the Sooners with the edge there with that weaker left side for the Cowboys. Defensive line, easily going to go with the Sooners there. Linebacker, I'll take, I just raved about them, the Pokes. Secondary, I'll go ahead and go with the Sooners. They've shown, more good than bad, I would say, even though it's been trending in the wrong direction. This is still a much improved secondary in terms of positioning and overall playmaking. Is that going to be the overall difference maker?
I think it's certainly a difference maker potential here. I think the secondary and this linebacking core for Oklahoma State have been a lot better than Oklahoma, and that's a big benefit. The running game, I think that's the biggest tail of tape comparison. Like I said, I think the team that runs the ball the best is going to win the game. And if Oklahoma State can run the ball and dominate with Ollie Gordon, they're going to run all over this weak secondary and weak backfield for Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma State has a great opportunity if Ollie Gordon is fully cooking on the ground, which I think is certainly possible for this Pokes offense.
Looking at the final thoughts and the prediction, keys to the game for Oklahoma. limit big plays on defense, regain that pass game confidence. Oklahoma State, you want to continue your run game dominance. Don't get burnt by speed in the secondary. This is the final Bedlam game. Even before they played Kansas, I said I was going to pick Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy's, shown plenty of, his displacements with this rivalry being moved on. His displeasure, that is. He's not very happy that Oklahoma really made no attempt to make this a continued rivalry. This is obviously very important to him, considering how long he's been in Stillwater. And I think Oklahoma State, they're clicking right now at the right time, 4 in a row. The offense is showcasing nice balance. Oklahoma, they really just got abused on the ground. They're trending backwards on the defensive side of the ball. Still don't have that explosiveness on the ground themselves. I was going to take Oklahoma State, again, 2 weeks ago, and I'm still going to take them here. The Kansas game really changes nothing, but really makes me want to pick the Pokes even more. Close score, 42-38. Last Bedlam game, I think, is going to go out with a bang here. I'm taking Oklahoma State all the way, and I'm very confident in doing that.
I can't pull the trigger on this. I would love to take Oklahoma State here. I'm going to be cautious and take Oklahoma. I think the defenses will have a good day. We saw this. The Cincinnati-Oklahoma game was a low-scoring affair. I think this game will be similarly a low-scoring potential. I have Oklahoma barely covering the spread. It's important to remember the last Bedlam game played here in Stillwater at Boone Pickens Stadium was the last game Lincoln Riley ever coached for Oklahoma. Oklahoma State beat Oklahoma 37-33 and ended any hopes of potential playoff opportunity for the Oklahoma Sooners. And Lincoln Riley, not too long after that, bolted, and Bob Stoops had to coach the bowl game, the Alamo Bowl, against Oregon. So certainly no love lost there for this Oklahoma team. They want to go back to Stillwater and win for one last time. Like you said, though, Mike Gundy and company, they're fired up. I'm very mad this is a dying rivalry, because this is a fantastic rivalry. There have been some amazing games over the years. In 2014 overtime thriller that Oklahoma State won some of the more contested games, the 48-47 thriller in 2018 that Oklahoma barely won, the 62-52 one in Stillwater the year before that. There have been some amazing games. It's a damn shame this rivalry is going away, but I think this will be a great game. I think whoever dominates on the ground is going to be the one that wins the game. So certainly I think Ollie Gordon and Oklahoma State have better potential, but right now I'm just going to lean towards Oklahoma's defense having a great day and winning this game in a great slugfest.
Yeah, that's pretty bold there. Bold on both sides. I really just think Gundy's going to pull out all the tricks here. This game's important to him. Like I said, very, very much so on the line here. They can also play their way into the conference title game as well with their late dominance here. So plenty on the line for both schools. Oklahoma's shot at the playoffs would be done. So this is going to be a great game, Nick. Typically, this isn't always the closest of games. This is going to be a phenomenal one, though, 3:30 on ABC.
Can't wait for this. An exciting game to have in the middle of the day.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.
Yeah, I don't really care. I'm just going to go with Oklahoma. I'll be cautiously optimistic.